Ένα ποτάμι που κυλάει, ποτάμι αιώνιο τέλειωτο, είναι ο λαός σου που περνάει την έρημο. Κάθε στιγμή και κάθε ώρα, στρατιές, γερές οι μαρτύρες, κι όλο σημώνουμε τη χώρα της χάριτος. Κι είσαι Χριστέ μου εσύ βροχή και εμείς σταγόνες πάνω στη γη. Πάρε τις στόλες, φάντες πηγή, καν το ποτάμι μεγάλο βαθύ. Τα χέρια που είναι υψωμένα, τα χέρια που προσεύχονται, καν τα ενωμένα αγιοκέρια στον ουρανό. Κάνε πολύ να γίνουμε ένα, το ενθρονούνται στην ψυχή, όρη μας τα χέρια ζυμωμένα, ψωμί ιερό. Μία η αλήθεια, μία η φωτιά, ένα το πνεύμα, μία η καρδιά, ένα τραπέζι, μία χαρά, κι όλοι οι αδέλφια στη Θεία Αγκαλιά.
Good morning. I'm Vespines Paula from the parish of St. Ioannis, Parramatta, and today's lesson will be on a recent saint of our church, St. Arsenios the Cappadocian, who we commemorate on the 10th of November. As I share with you his life story, let us reflect on his many virtues and his love for serving others. The most blessed St. Arsenios was born around 1840 in Farasa, in the region of Cappadocia, Asia Minor. His parents were rich in virtues and rather modest in material possessions. Now these loving parents, they had two sons, Vlasios and Theodoros. Theodoros would go on to become St. Arsenios. And these two boys were orphaned at quite an early age, and so they went to live with their aunt after both parents passed away. One day, Vlasios persuaded his younger brother Theodoros to go with him to a field which belonged to their father, which lay close to a torrent. And a torrent is like a strong, fast-moving stream of water. As they were crossing this torrent, the water carried Theodoros away, and Vlasios, in tears, called on St. George, whose chapel was close by. While Vlasios was crying and asking the saint to help, he suddenly saw Theodoros next to him, joyfully telling him how a horseman, dressed like a monk, had hauled him out of the water, set him on his horse, and brought him out of the torrent. From then on, Theodoros vowed that he too was going to become a monk, and in this way God saw to it that he would take the right road from an early age. This event had its effect on Vlasios as well, who in his own way also gave himself to God, by glorifying him as a teacher of Byzantine music. When Theodoros was a bit older, he was sent to live with another one of his aunts who was a teacher to complete his studies. And seeing how intelligent he was, it was arranged for the boy to move to Smyrna and live with other relatives to help him continue his higher education. In Smyrna, apart from Greek and church studies, he also learnt Armenian, Turkish, and a little French. Whenever Theodoros came back to Farasa during school breaks, he would gather the children in his father's house and teach them what he himself knew of reading and writing using church texts. After completing his studies in Smyrna, and now aged 26, St. Arsenios entered the monastery of the Flavians, which was dedicated to St. John the Baptist, and it was here that he was tonsured and given his new name Arsenios. But he didn't get to enjoy his tranquility for long, because there was a great need for teachers at the time, and so he was ordained a deacon and sent back to his childhood village of Farasa. And it was here that he began his mission with divine zeal. The cause of the illiteracy of the children was, of course, the ever-present pressure of the Turks, and so for this reason, St. Arsenios went about his work very carefully, so as not to draw unwanted attention. And to do this, he prepared a room as a school, and instead of desks, he used long-haired goat skins or sheep skins for the children to kneel on and to follow the lessons on. By doing this, he avoided provoking the Turks, and even when they happened to see the children, they simply assumed that they were all just praying. Many times, St. Arsenios would even gather the children together and he would take them to the chapel of Panagia, which was located high up on a cliff in a cave, and he used this chapel as a secret school. He was then ordained a priest in his 30s with the title of Archimandrite and the blessing to act as a spiritual father. After his ordination, he went on a pilgrimage to the Holy Lands and then returned to Farasa. From then on, the Farasiotes, the villagers of Farasa, called him Chatzifendis. His spiritual activity now began to intensify and spread. And he helped the frightened Christians to remain strong and firm in their faith, not only by his encouraging words, but also through the wondrous acts which they saw their father Arsenios performing, because he had an abundance of God's grace with which to heal the souls and bodies of the suffering people. When the Christians saw these things, they believed more strongly, because they saw the great power of our faith. As for the Turks, who also saw these works, while they didn't actually become Christians themselves, they did at least become rather less harsh in their treatment of the Christians. Wherever St. Arsenios went, and sick people were brought to him for prayers to be read over, he never asked whether they were Christian or Turk, but only what they were suffering from, so that he could find the appropriate prayer to read over them. St. Arsenios would naturally become very tired by the many difficult responsibilities which he had undertaken, but he felt consoled and comforted and rested when he saw others being helped. Whenever someone was sick and could not be brought to the saint's cell, either because he was very seriously ill or because the distance was too great, they would send St. Arsenios a piece of their clothing, and he would read an appropriate prayer over it, and it would be returned to them. And the sick person would wear it in faith and reverence and be healed. Since the illnesses were many and varied, St. Arsenios could not always find a corresponding prayer for each, and so he would take the book of Psalms and use those as well. Whenever he saw someone physically ill who was also spiritually sick, he didn't heal him at once, but gradually. That is, he told him to come again and again until he had healed him spiritually, and only then did he miraculously make him physically well with the final prayer. Naturally, St. Arsenios never accepted money. He used to say, "Our faith is not for sale." One way that we can see St. Arsenios' humility is that he made it a rule never to sit on an animal, no matter how far the journey. Keeping in mind that he did travel to Jerusalem 5 times in his life, and he was usually barefoot, St. Arsenios' great sensitivity would not allow him to tire animals while he himself rested. Along with his manner of spiritual gifts, he was also given the gift of foresight. He had, for example, been told by God years before of the exchange of populations that would occur between Turkey and Greece in the early 1920s. And so he would tell the Farasiotes not to spend too much, but to save for the journey. When the time did come for the villagers to migrate to Greece during the population exchange, all the Farasiotes began their preparations at once, just as St. Arsenios did. First, he baptized all the unbaptized children, including the village president's child. St. Arsenios gave this boy his own name and prophesied that he would be a great monk, and indeed he would be, becoming St. Paisios the Athonite. St. Arsenios was 83 years old when he accompanied his flock from Asia Minor to Greece, and he kept his prayer rule and he walked the journey by foot. He didn't cease to comfort the people, because it was necessary for him to prepare them to accept calmly both the separation amongst themselves once they moved to Greece, and also his own departure for the next life. After many trials and tribulations, the ship docked at the Greek port of St. George in Piraeus, and upon setting foot on Greek soil, the Farasiotes joyfully celebrated that great day, which was the major feast day of the elevation of the precious cross, September 14, 1929. They were then moved to Kerkyra. There, however, St. Arsenios fell ill, and the Farasiotes became very worried. Against his will, they took him to the city hospital. They believed he would recover in hospital with the care that he would receive, and would be with them again, although he had often told them, "In Greece I shall live only 40 days." During his last days in hospital, he said to the village president, "Come, let's bid each other farewell, Prodromos, because the day after tomorrow I'm leaving for the next life. Our Panagia came yesterday afternoon and told me. She even showed me around the holy mountains as well. And I saw the monasteries, which I've always wanted so much to see, but have never been worthy of it." Saint Arsenios was buried in Kerkyra's cemetery, in the section reserved for departed clergy. His spiritual children erected a marble slab over his grave with his name on it. Saint Arsenios fell asleep in the Lord on the 10th of November, 1924, at the age of 83. Saint Arsenios is an inspiring modern-day saint for us all, and he holds a special place in many Orthodox Christians' hearts. Reading, learning, and emulating the lives of the saints is very important for all Orthodox Christians, especially while we are young and are still developing our characters and relationships with God. Saint Paisios tells us that our goal is to live an Orthodox way of life. The saints truly lived this Orthodox way and therefore inspire and change our lives towards Christ. We have such detail of Saint Arsenios' life because it was recorded by Saint Paisios, who collected the information from the Pharisiotes. If you would like to learn more about Saint Arsenios, have a look in your bookshelf, the Greek Orthodox Christian Society's bookstore, or the online bookstores of our monasteries, where you can buy Saint Paisios' account of Saint Arsenios' life.